All right. Chad Hennings. Just now as we were getting set to record this interview, I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And you just said, "Life." Uh, what do you mean?
I think that's the understatement of the year, right? Just this upside down world sometimes that we find ourselves in with the COVID craziness, with the presidential elections, with the shutdown of the economy, being a business owner. It's just trying to navigate through life. And one of probably the best silver lining to this 2020 is the amount of time that I've got to spend with my wife and my kids. It has been great, but just trying to navigate through this COVID craziness, like a lot of my fellow citizens, it's been a challenge.
What do you think has been the most challenging part?
The uncertainty for me, from a business owner's perspective, of what's going to, where's it all going to end? Are we going to stay in a lockdown situation? What are some of the government restrictions being placed upon us? How are we going to be able to navigate the whole aspects of travel? Are we going to have to wear a mask for the next? They encouraging us to continue to wear masks. It's just the aspect of uncertainty, and that's it. And I just, from sensing and talking to people, there's this aspect of fear and anxiety that I've never really seen in a long time. Even having been in the military and being in combat situations, this is an invisible enemy that people sometimes have never experienced anything like this. They don't know how to deal with it.
Chad, what would you say is your business? Like, if you had to describe your business as a business owner to a layman, how would you describe it?
I have a commercial real estate company. So what we do is we represent owners that want to lease property, called tenant representation. We do real estate development. We build buildings, as well as we buy and sell buildings. So I followed in the steps of one of my mentors, Roger Staubach, in that field, and several years ago formed a company called Rubicon Representation with some former workers of mine, peers, and it's been a great ride thus far.
How much did playing for the Cowboys and the platform that is America's team, in addition to your education and the skills you acquired, how much did playing for the Cowboys help you in your pursuit of being a business owner?
There's the old adage a lot of people have heard: once a Marine, always a Marine; once a Cowboy, always a Cowboy. It has helped tremendously. The Cowboys are probably the most recognized sports franchise in the world. And I can say that because I've been overseas, deployed either in Europe or in Turkey, and you talk to fans about Dallas Cowboys, everybody knows what that star on that side of that helmet means. And it's a very visible brand. And I feel proud to be a part of that tradition of being a Dallas Cowboy. And I mentor a lot of these younger athletes that have been with the Cowboys. The fact that I say, conduct yourselves with a sense of purpose and integrity, and you can be able to provide for yourself in business post-career in the Dallas or the North Texas area because of your affiliation with the Dallas Cowboys. It is a great platform to kick off the next phase of life. And some young men get it, others don't, but that's a personal decision on their part.
What's that transition like? I've asked plenty of your colleagues, and I get a mixed bag of answers. What's that transition like when your career comes to an end in 2000?
I think I had a little step up on a lot of my peers for the mere fact that I had a real job before I came to the Cowboys. I was a fighter pilot flying jets, flying A-10s for the Air Force. So that transition, I kind of knew what to expect, but it was a challenge, because now, for me anyway, what do I want to do? The world is at your feet. Before I was kind of told in the Air Force, you're going to predominantly, you're going to do this, you're going to go here, you're going to serve here, you're going to fly these missions. You get to the Cowboys, you're in your routine, and your week's routine, your off season has the same routine, and it's repetitive. Now, when you have the total freedom to do whatever you want to do, it can be overwhelming at times. So for me, it was just a matter of sitting down and making that determination. Okay, now what do I want to do now that I'm a grown up and I have to do this adulting thing?
So take us back to you growing up in Colorado.
Actually, I grew up in Iowa. I'm a farm boy from Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're originally from Iowa.
Yeah, no, I grew up, that is where, for me, I grew up on a farm that had been in our family for 130 plus years at that time. So we had a long tradition of lessons learned, of work ethic, of commitment, of being able to, self-sacrifice for the good of others. It's just that aspect of an honesty, integrity, humility. I learned a lot of these traits from my parents, from my grandparents, aunts, uncles, because we had a large extended family, that still farmed and lived in the local area. And those lessons, I think, that I learned, in early life, even prior to getting into high school, helped me become the better student athlete that I was. Because I was able to take those same traits and apply it in the classroom or on the gridiron or on the wrestling mat, on the basketball court, whatever. And for me, it set me up, and I think for success later in life, because it gave me that expectation of truly what excellence is and what walking out and living a life of excellence is all about.
So you're telling me you grew up near a farm or on a farm?
I grew up on a farm. We had, at the time, it was probably 1,000 acres. We raised corn, and we had a large feedlot operation. We fed out cattle, beef. And that's why I'm my size. I grew up eating red meat twice a day, every day of my life. But that was the thing, you had to feed the cattle. I mean, nobody else was going to do it, no matter how you felt, no matter what the weather was outside, whether it was a blizzard, or whether it was 100 degrees outside, you had to go out and do it. And I think that work ethic helped me, when I set goals to, hey, I don't feel like it, but hey, get your butt up, get going, let's proceed.
And so you could literally relate to that old Wendy's slogan, "Where's the beef?" Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Very much so.
So how do you transition to an interest in the military? Where did that start?
For me, I wasn't highly recruited. I went to a small high school in Iowa, wasn't highly recruited. I had some interest from the local universities, Iowa State, University of Iowa. But I got this, believe it, for the kids today, millennials that can't necessarily relate, I got a postcard in the mail from the Air Force Academy saying, hey, we're interested in you. Take a look at us, send some information. And for me, I was like, wow, this was an opportunity for me to be able to go to a school that was unlike any other institution of higher learning, where I could play Division I football, but yet I could get a phenomenal education and experience, and then set myself up afterwards, because I'm in the military. I'm going to have a job after graduation, at least for a 5-year military commitment. And of course, flying, you add on additional commitment to that. So that was my mindset. Truly playing in the NFL was never, it was a dream. Yeah, it'd be cool. But, I'm a farm kid from Iowa. That stuff doesn't happen, and it's not the norm. So that's why I went to the Air Force Academy, and I was very fortunate to have had the success in the gridiron in the classroom there. And I was drafted by the Cowboys prior to graduating, back under the Tom Landry, Tex Schramm, and Gil Brandt era. But I had a military commitment, and I chose to up my commitment to 8 years after pilot training, because I wanted to fly jets. So technically, playing in the NFL was never an option, truly an option for me, because I'd have been a 32-year-old rookie once my commitment was up.
As it stood, if I'm not mistaken, you were a 26-year-old rookie.
26-year-old rookie. Well, I turned 27 when in the season. I have an October birthday, but and the only way that I was able to get out after the first Gulf War, our armed forces went through a reduction in force, where they waived commitment time, not just for me, but for a lot of individuals across the board. They waived my pilot training commitment, and they waived 2 years off of my Air Force Academy commitment. And again, not just for me, but for anybody that wanted to do it. So I had a lot of my peers got out and went to fly for the airlines at that point in time. But that's where I raised my hand and said, hey, I'll volunteer. I can go play for the Cowboys. And for me, I think my coolest claim to fame, not that I'm a 3-time Super Bowl champion, blah, 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 but I flew my last mission in northern Iraq in the early part of '92, and I played in the Super Bowl the same year.
That is cool.
I think that's pretty cool.
That's something that's two things that most people walking the face of the earth will never get an opportunity to do.
But I'm just very fortunate, and praise God that I was able to have those opportunities.
Chad, what is, for civilians, what is the military commitment? What does it embody for someone who will never experience military life? The good, the bad, the ugly. What is it?
Well, basically, in a nutshell, in super, super layman terms, Uncle Sam owns you. In other words, that you sign up for a commitment, you raise your hand and take an oath of office, in essence, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, that you're willing to put yourself in harm's way, that they can send you wherever, and you willingly go, that you're going to obey the lawful orders of those appointed over you, and that if it calls, like for me, to fly a mission in combat, to put myself into harm's way, hey, that's what I signed up for, and that's what I'm going to do. And that also entails being gone from your families for extended periods of time on deployments. I spent 2-3 months deployments away from my wife. We didn't have children at the time. I was flying missions. I was based out of RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge in the United Kingdom in England. But then we forward deployed to Incirlik, Turkey, out of the city of Adana. And I spent 6 months flying missions into northern Iraq in support of different missions there. So it's a lot of time away from family. It's a lot of sacrifice. And the best thing about it, you don't get paid much. So there's commitment, harm's way. And, those people that do it have a strong sense of purpose, of freedom, and they don't take our freedoms for granted, and they're willing to put themselves between us and the bad guys to make sure that we can continue to live our lifestyle accordingly. And I think that we can't do enough to honor our men and women who are in our active duty military, armed forces, as well as thank our veterans as we approach this Veterans Day. We can't thank them enough for what they've done for us. And no matter what capacity you served, whether if you were riding a desk in San Antonio or whether you were on the front lines in Afghanistan downrange, you served. And that's what counts.
Do you think military members as a whole, active and veterans, get enough respect?
I think, yes. And I'll say that in comparison to my military brethren, veterans that came back from the Vietnam conflict, where they had a nation that did not respond well to them, that spurned them as baby killers, as being a part of a conflict that, they weren't the cause of it. They were there to serve. And they were isolated at times, and they were shunned. So in comparison to that, we got it pretty good. Our nation is very thankful, and for the most part, I think the majority of Americans are very gracious and are thankful for our military veterans, and as they should be. We should have nationalistic pride, and you should be proud if you're able, physically, mentally, etc., to be able to serve.
What's war like? What is war like? Because for me, Chad, and I'm soon to be 47 years old, I've seen war on TV, but I know that doesn't begin to do it justice of what it's like. What is war like?
That's the thing, is that in this modern age, I think that, in all honesty, if we have the technology that we have today regarding the access that our media has to our military today. If we'd had that in World War II, I think that people would have seen the true horrors of war and would have probably been less likely to continue in that conflict as they did. I think it'd be a whole different culturally entity. And I think that war today it's different for me as a pilot versus a guy who's on the ground versus someone who's in support. That from my own personal experience, it's different from dropping bombs or rolling in on a tank from 5,000 feet up in the air, where I'm sitting in a depleted, basically a titanium bathtub where I have a lot of defenses, and the enemy is not as sophisticated as being on the ground where you're in close contact, close quarters with an enemy. So it's different experiences for different people. And this is where a lot of times I have a lot of grace for our veterans that come back with quote unquote post-traumatic stress, because when you are in that environment, not knowing, walking through a village and in a remote village in Afghanistan where you don't know where a villager is friend or foe, and constantly being that high state of awareness for months on end, for weeks on end, that does something to you physiologically, your stress levels, your cortisol levels, and you come back, you're changed. So, I mean, this is where we need to thank our veterans even more because of the ramifications, and to highlight that we have 22 veterans on average that commit suicide every day. And a lot of it is because of not inability to deal with this post-traumatic stress issue. And again, isolation. This whole time, not to go off on the rails, but this time of isolation, this time of COVID that we've had, we need each other, and particularly veterans need to be around other veterans to be able to talk things through. But when you're isolated and you start to listen, get into your own head, and those demons keep coming back, you're continuing to fight those battles over and over again. So it's, as war is hell. And it's not just when you're there, you're dealing with a lot of those issues for sometimes the rest of your life if you're not able to come to grips with the things that you're able to do, and sometimes the horrific things that you saw.
And I know you just differentiated, being in a cockpit like you were and being on the ground. When you're going on those missions in the Gulf, what's the process of preparing to do something where you can die? Are you making phone calls? Are you calling your loved ones, Chad, and saying, hey, if this is the last time I speak to you, I love you. Just know I'll always be there with you. Are you trying to downplay it? What's that mindset?
It is a mindset. One of the things that for us, and for any military member, when you go through training, you can die in training also. We're flying jets. A lot of the training missions, I have an engine goes out, or if I get into a precarious position and something bad happens, I can die in a training mission as easy as I can die in a combat mission. But the mindset for us was always that you play like you practice. We would go, we were so well trained and so well prepared in our mission and for what we were going to conduct that you do not have time to quote unquote be mentally constipated and think about the what ifs. All you're thinking about is accomplishing your mission. I remember a mentor of mine who flew missions in the latter part of the Korean conflict as well as in Vietnam. He's an old fighter pilot. And he shared something with me that really impacted me during my time when I was with him at the Air Force Academy, as well as when I was able to fly my first combat mission. I remember what he said. He said, Chad, every time we would get ready to fly a mission, we'd always say to the player, God, just help us to accomplish our mission. It matters not what happens to me, just let me accomplish my mission. And that was a very profound impact on a young 22-year-old kid. And that's the mindset that I had. It was mission first. It was just that myopic view of let's just accomplish our mission. So you don't think about the what ifs. And actually, thankfully, we didn't have the internet. When I was flying those missions, we were still in this old time of maybe get a one phone call a week to, writing letters with snail mail, that I didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that the family issues on the home front, that it allowed me the opportunity to concentrate on the mission and not be pulled away by, honey, the car broke down, or, the kids are crying, those sorts of things, which when guys have to deal with that today, that can put them in a dangerous, precarious position.
On a lighter note, what's the talk within the different branches of service like? What is, I know you got the Army, they think they're the elite. You got the Navy, they think they're the elite. Chad, you represent the Air Force, and then you got the Marines, and we could start talking about Navy SEALs, but what is that cross chit chat like?
I'll put it this way: the best analogy to be able to describe that is we're all family. Like, it's like brothers. There's sibling rivalry. We go at it all the time, like for the Air Force Army game, or the Air Force Navy game, or for the, the Army Navy game. This the rivalry for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. We love that sense of competition. But when somebody from outside the family comes at us, a foreign entity, man, Katie bar the door, all hell's going to break loose, and you're going to have the world's most awesome fighting force coming at you. So it's like brothers. We get after each other, sibling rivalry, but when we're focused on a mission, we're pulling that plow in the same direction. There's no other force in the world that can compete.
But is there something to the stereotypes that civilians have heard? Army, the tough guys, the Air Force, they're the pretty boys, they're the pilots. I mean, is there something to these stereotypes?
They're just, a lot of it is, I'll tell you what, our armed forces has changed so much that we're more of a unified force, a combined force now than it was really when I was in, where it was distinction between the different military branches. We always talk about, the Army, the first thing they do is, they go in and place wherever they're going to put their tents and stuff first, their barracks. And, the Navy goes in, where are we going to put our commissary? And the Air Force, first thing they put in is, hey, where's the golf course going to go, right? That's the typical stuff that goes around. But, and again, they're just stereotypes. But because of the combined force that we have, a lot of Air Force guys are ingrained with the Navy and the Army, and Army guys are ingrained with the Navy, that it's a lot more combined force now. So a lot of those stereotypes are not necessarily as applicable today. There's some are still there, but not as much as what they once were.
Now, your size, you can only fly certain types of jets. Like, how do they determine how big you are for a jet? Did you have to try to get in it and it couldn't close? Like, how do they determine that?
I had received waivers for my height and my weight to be able to fly. I was too tall, too heavy for the ACES 2 ejection seat in the Air Force. That was in a lot of the Air Force aircraft. So with that, I was predominantly out of pilot training. I was only able to fly the A-10, which I flew, or the F-15. I couldn't fly into an F-16 as far as the single seat fighters. One of the funny story is the initial jet trainer that I flew in the Air Force when I was going through pilot training at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. The 2 weeks after I was flying this jet, and it was a jet where you sat side by side. Mm-hmm. The chief wing flight surgeon came up to me 2 weeks after I was flying the jet, and the officers called and said, Chad, you know what? We had to actually go back and check the design specifications of the ejection seat of the T-37 because we're not sure if you clear the tail, if you ever had to eject or punch out of that aircraft. I'm like, okay, well, thank you for sharing that with me now. But my instructor pilots would actually brief, this is really cool. If we were in a controlled ejection situation, which is an oxymoron for a controlled crash, that we would fly to a controlled bailout area, we would roll the aircraft upside down, then pull the ejection handles to allow the extra G of the Earth's gravitational force to pull me out of the aircraft to make sure that I would be able to clear the tail of the aircraft when ejected. So it's like, now that's one more thing I got to think about, that if I got to eject, I'm like, I'm freaking out already that, okay, we got to roll it upside down, then pull the ejection handles. Well, those are hey, when you're young, I'll call it when you're young and dumb, you'll do whatever it takes. And, technically I was too heavy, I got a ton of other stories like that of just sacrifices must be made to be able to do what you want to do. And again, when you're 22, 23, 24 years old, you don't think about the what ifs. You light your hair on fire and let's go.
When you finally get your waivers and you get to join the Dallas Cowboys, what do you remember about the initial beginnings of your Cowboys career?
It was drinking by the fire hose. I hadn't played football in over 4 years. I haven't, I was flying jets, so my football acuity and, just the physical aspect of everything. And then for me, I remember my first training camp in Austin, where my wife and I moved from England, where if it got above 78 degrees, they had people that would die over there because they didn't have air conditioning in their homes. And then leaving there and coming to Texas, to Austin, where it's 95, 98 degrees, 65% humidity. I lost 14 pounds my first practice in a 2-hour in the morning period. And I didn't know about hydration. So I maybe drink, a gallon of water. Okay, just say a gallon is equates to 6 pounds, right? So I've lost 2 gallons down. And then I go back in and weigh in. I didn't quite make it to my initial weight. I lost another 12 pounds. So I'm net down about 18 pounds from where I normally should be, 3 gallons of water, and I'm not drinking enough. And all of a sudden, my eyebrows lock up and I'm just locked down. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck did I just get myself into? And I had to get IVs and I felt like crap, because when you cramp that much, it's like somebody taking a baseball bat and beating on you on top of doing 2-a-days. And remember, this is Jimmy Johnson, where we actually did do 2-a-days. We do 2 practices, 2 days in a row, 1 practice, 2 practices, 2 days in a row, 1 practice. We didn't have the current collective bargaining agreement. And if I sound like I'm bitter, I'm just, this was back when men were men, okay? All tongue in cheek. But that's the way it was, but for me, the mental toughness of what I shared with you earlier about growing up on a farm and then flying jets, just that mindset that I had to have, it was a big adjustment from a physical aspect. But then it's kind of like riding a bike. I don't think I really truly got comfortable playing football till about midway through the season. And that's when I had to I asked Coach Johnson, hey, I'm not seeing the field. I was actually inactive for my first 7 games. And I had to ask him, I said, Coach, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll play special teams. Now, remember, I'm a 6'6", probably at the time was about 275 defensive lineman asking to run down kickoffs. And that's, you don't see it, but it's something that, hey, I want to play. I'll do whatever it takes. So they put me on the special teams, and that's how I initially got on the field.
How do you summarize being a part of one of the greatest legacies in any sport? I mean, that 3 title in a 4-year span thing is something that may never come around again, but it's one of the most dominant eras by any team in any sport, and you were a part of it.
It's for me, and I think a lot of my teammates will say the same thing, is that, it wasn't so much about the accolades, about what the team accomplished. It was more about the relationships in the locker room, on the field. I tell you, I've never been around a group of more selfless individuals who wanted to win football games, that they would, personally do whatever it takes. It wasn't about individual ego. It was about winning football games, not just winning football games, but about winning Super Bowls. That was the greatness of what Coach Johnson was able to instill, that mindset, that we settle nothing best. Excellence for us is winning Super Bowls. And if we fall short of that, you didn't accomplish your goal that year. And for us, and for me personally, it was a great leadership laboratory. It was a great learning experience to be a part of that. So for me, being long-winded here, yeah, it was cool. 3 Super Bowls. Yeah, it helps in business, helps in all this stuff. But what I look back on are those guys, and being around those guys in the locker room, being around Charles Haley, Leon Lett, Russell Maryland, to work out, to actually go out and bust our butts day in, day out, push each other, but to get out there And when we would walk out on the football field, I'll call it, it's kind of like being a fighter pilot. You have that confident arrogance. We knew we were good. We knew we were going to win. We just knew it. But we went out there and we executed day in, day out. And it was everybody, for whether you're on special teams, whether you were starter, whether you were backup, it didn't matter. We all had that mindset. And that's what made those teams so, so special.
How would you describe, unlike any other franchise, that let's just take your teams, the teams that won the 3 Super Bowl titles. So many guys are doing so many positive things. And I know you guys don't all communicate all the time. I know within the team there's certain friendship groups within the team where some players are closer to other players, and your groups get smaller and smaller in some ways as you go on in life, and in other areas your groups get bigger and bigger. But when you think about that team and you start to go down the roll call and you start to hear all the success stories, like how much are you impressed by that parallel?
It's, I don't know how many, what is there, 7 Hall of Famers that were on that team, and I'm sure we may get a couple more out of that before it's all said and done. But again, I go back to a lot of those guys, if they didn't play for the Cowboys, would they truly have the Hall of Fame careers? And this is what I tell young people, it's don't necessarily go out and want to be that All-American. You strive to be the best teammate, because when your team wins and you do your best to contribute to that success of the team, those individual accolades will follow. And again, that's what I fall back on. It's that selflessness. They didn't, Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman, Emmett, Charles, those guys, they never set out that I want to be a Hall of Famer. They set out they wanted to be the best at their position for the team to win and to win Super Bowls. And when you do that, the rest of that other stuff takes care of itself. And that, again, it's the beauty of the culture that was created and that was sustained during that 4-year run that truly makes that team special. Because it's tough to repeat year after year after year. And I think that was ultimately what led to the downfall of that dynasty was, at that point in time, we didn't have a common core focus of mission, of purpose. It kind of became more individual agendas at that time. And when you kind of fall into that trap, that's where it's tough to repeat.
Chad, how much do you want people to, celebrate your role in the ministry?
Well, for me, it's not about me. I am thankful that I've had the platform that I've had of being a fighter pilot, serving in the Air Force, of being a former Dallas Cowboy, that it has given me access. And I think for me, it's about legacy, and it's about, my family first and foremost, my kids, but it's also about giving back and making a difference. And that's why I do what I do within business, within my men's ministry, Wingman, why I speak, why I've written the books that I've written. It's all about giving back and encouraging people, to live that life of excellence, to live to that higher noble purpose and cause.
And last question, Chad, when, the book is written on Chad Hennings, how do you want it to read? Because you've had all these different layers and you've had all these successful, periods of time in your life, and you don't come across as the guy who is defined by one thing. Like some guys that I've interviewed, frankly, they're football, and more football. And that's it. That's not how you come across. How do you want the Chad Hennings life? How do you want that book to read? Not the books you've written, but the book that other people have on Chad Hennings' life.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that what you do does not define who you are. Your identity is not within your occupation or what you're particularly doing. And I think I would use the metaphor that Chad Hennings, he was a good teammate. And I say that no matter what I do, whether it's in business, whether as a fighter pilot, whether as former Cowboy football player, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, that it was all about building others up. And for me, I was able to grasp, quote unquote, that mindset or that truth early in life, that if I do the best that I can do, and no matter what I do, and I can encourage others to do the same, and that team or that organization rises up, I've done my job. And for me, that's all that I can do.
That's awesome, Chad. Thank you, man. I'm going to stop this recording now. Thank you.
Yeah, let me know when